Chapter 15. Tom's Confession. Mr. Phelps went back to town again before breakfast, but he couldn't find any trace of Tom. He and Aunt Sally just sat there at the table, thinking and not saying a word. The coffee was cold in the cups and the food was untouched. Suddenly Aunt Sally saw something. She jumped up and ran towards the window. So did I. There was a procession coming towards the house. It was the doctor, then Jim with his hands tied behind his back, then a crowd of people carrying Tom Sawyer on a mattress. Aunt Sally flung herself at Tom, crying, "Oh, he's dead! I just know it!" Tom turned his head a little and muttered something or other, which showed he was still breathing. Then they took him into the house to put him to bed. I followed the men to see what they were going to do with Jim. Some of them wanted to hang Jim as an example to all the other slaves, but others were against it, even though they were cussing Jim considerably. But the whole time, Jim never let on that he knew me or anything about what Tom and I had done. Meanwhile, the men put Jim back in the hut, and this time they chained his arms and legs to the bed and had a couple of farmers stand watch in front of the place. By and by, the doctor came out of the house and said that Tom was going to be all right, but that it was Jim who had really saved Tom's life. When he got to the island, he said, I saw I couldn't remove the bullet without some help, but the boy wasn't in any condition for me to leave and get help. He was getting worse and worse. I knew I couldn't do anything at all by myself, so I said aloud, if only I had help. Somehow, the minute I said it, out crawls this slave from nowhere and says he'll help. And he did too. He did it very well, I might add. Anyway, he knew he must be a runaway, so I took him back with me, but never once did he try to get away or leave this boy's side. He's a faithful man, that he is. Well, then everyone softened up a little, and I was mighty thankful to that old doctor for doing Jim that good turn. Then I got to wonder about how I was going to explain Tom's being shot and me not saying anything to anybody. But I had plenty of time, because Aunt Sally stuck to the sick room all day and all night, and every time I saw her husband, I avoided him. Next morning, when I heard that Tom was a good deal better and Aunt Sally had gone to take a nap, I slipped in to see him, but he was sleeping, and sleeping very peacefully too. He was pale, not fire-faced the way he was when they brought him in, so I sat down and waited for him to wake up, but just as he began to stir, in walked Aunt Sally. When Tom opened his eyes, he began to talk, and talk he did. Why, he bragged and told Aunt Sally what a splendid job we did in the freeing Jim, and how we planned and prepared, and how exciting it all was. Aunt Sally couldn't believe her ears. "Well, I never heard the likes of it all in my born days," she cried. "So it was you, you rapscallions, that's been making all this trouble and turning everybody's wits clean inside out and scaring us all to death?" But Tom was only concerned about one thing, Jim, and Aunt Sally explained that Jim was safe and sound and bound hand and foot in the hut. "They haven't had any right to shut him up," shouted Tom. "Turn him loose. He's no slave. He's as free as any creature on this earth. Old Miss Watson, his mistress, died 2 months ago, and she was so ashamed of her plans to sell him down the river that she set him free in her will." "Then what on earth did you want to set him free for, seeing that he was already free?" asked Aunt Sally. "Why, for the adventure of it," answered Tom. Just then Aunt Polly, Tom's aunt from the back home, appeared at the door. Now, the whole game was up for sure. She had taken the steamboat all the way from St. Petersburg to find out what had been going on. First thing she'd do is look at me and say, "Huck Finn, what on earth are you doing here?" Poor Aunt Sally didn't know what to think. All this time she thought I was Tom and that Tom was Sid. Well, finally Tom and I confessed everything. There was no use trying to cover it up. Aunt Polly confirmed Tom's story about Jim. So as soon as they could, the men set Jim free and he came to the sick room to visit Tom. Aunt Sally gave him a good meal and we all sat around and talked. Tom gave Jim $40 for being prisoner for us and for doing it so well. And then Tom and Jim and I talked on and on. After a while I saw that the old look come into Tom's eye. He had a plan again. "Why don't all three of us sneak out one night and get outfits and go for a howling adventure among the Indians over in the territory?" "That sounds just fine, Tom," I said, "but I don't have any money to buy an outfit. I reckon that pap has been to Judge Thatcher and gotten all my money by now." It was then that Jim told me that while we were on the Jackson's Island he had seen a house float by. Inside the house he had seen Pap's body, so Pap was dead, and the money was mine. Tom's well now, and he's got his bullet on a chain round his neck. The adventure is all over, and there's nothing more to write about. I'm glad of it, because if I'd have known what trouble it was to write a book, I wouldn't have tackled it. Now I'm going to head out to Indian Territory ahead of the rest. Aunt Sally wants to adopt me and make me live in a house and be civilized. I tried it before and I can't stand it. Thank you for listening to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. That is the end of this story. If there are any novels that you would like to suggest to be read, don't hesitate to put them down in the comments. I will be holding a poll once I have about 5 suggestions, and then we can all decide what's next. Thank you so much. This has been Saul's Audiobooks for The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain.